Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Land Your Ground podcast. This is the podcast for landowners and dreamers. Today's topic, we're going to be talking with a special guest who is not only a longtime land industry sales professional, but also an investor and a successful property manager. This is someone who's bought and developed and been a part of a lot of hunting farm renovation projects and really has a lot of in-depth knowledge about that. So really excited to welcome the guest today and talking with him about how to buy hunting land. And that's the key tips here for an outdoor enthusiast. So big part of our audience is farmers, ranchers, homesteaders, but of course, a major component of it still is the hunters and the recreational land buyers. So I think you're going to get a lot out of today's episode, but if you fall into the homestead category or hobby farmer, Tony, our guest today, is definitely he could stretch his wings into that category pretty far too. So we're going to get a lot of unique perspective from him. Like everybody to tune in here and listen for the duration because I think you're going to get a lot of value out of our special guest today, Mr. Tony Smotherman. Tony, thanks for coming on.
Well, what's going on, Chase? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing I'm doing okay today, but as I can have told you and you can already kind of attest to this morning, my morning has been crazy. It's a good problem to have when you're a land sales professional. You don't complain about the phone ringing or about somebody calling and want you to go show a property at 7:30 in the morning, and you just jump in the truck and you go do things, right? But
Well, it's kind of you got to do whatever it takes to do the job right. Back years ago, I worked well in high school. I'm kind of a gearhead. You can see one of my classic trucks over my shoulder here, and
yeah,
I worked at AutoZone in high school, and they had a slogan, which is their national slogan for all their stores across the country. But I worked at a particular store there in Middle Tennessee, which is where I grew up at, and they had this slogan that they made you learn before you could become an employee, and it was called Whttiger. And Whttiger obviously is an acronym. And I thought, golly, of course, as a young person, you think you're the smartest person in the world. And I thought this acronym was the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And Whttiger stands for whatever it takes to do the job right. So
ooh,
whatever it takes to do the job right.
I
So
actually really like that.
uh, so here's the sad thing. Okay, so that was like when I was 16.
Yeah,
You can tell by the gray on the side of my face, I am not 16 anymore. So I've been using that acronym and that slogan from AutoZone for the better part of 36 years right now. And not only is it 36 years of use, it is broken down in days and sometimes minutes that I
mm,
use that acronym because doing what we do. Of course, I work in the hunting industry and have for quite a long time.
right.
And then obviously a land broker and developer too over the years. And when I say developing, it's not for subdivisions; it's for hunting purposes, not to get any black cloud through on us there.
Sure.
But I
Yep.
use that acronym every day just because there's scenarios that are thrown at us all the time that we basically have to be movers and shakers. You got to kind of go with the flow. And I say there's fires in our world every day. Some are bigger than other ones,
hmm
but we have to do whatever it takes to do the job right to get those fires put out and take care of our clients and our business at hand.
Right. Nope, 100% right. And you also have to be quick to move on the investment side of it. So this
Oh
is
boy.
good info for buyers, obviously, but um, you don't get the good deals like they say early bird gets the worm. But when
Hmm.
you know what you're looking for and you're an educated buyer and the right piece comes along, you got to be positioned, you got to have the wisdom at hand, ready to make big decisions quickly and all that sort of thing. But um, I like that. I like
You know,
whatever it takes to
I
get the
call
job
that.
done right.
Yeah, dude, it's unbelievable. There's been so many things that cross my path and again on a daily basis where I'm like, you know what? I really just don't want to do that. But then like this little bird on my shoulder goes, "Hey, bro, whatever it takes to do the job right." And I'm like, "Oh gosh, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it." So it stuck with me for such a long time, and it is amazing. And I hate that I kind of poo-pooed it when I was in high school there, but man, is it stuck with me.
Oh,
But kind of what you talked about there, where you got to be able to or positioned to make quick judgment calls and move fast on things because
hmm
the good deals do not stick around because there's other people that are doing their best to outwork you. So basically, what I try to do and tell everybody that I work with is you just got to front load the work. You got to do all the work in advance and stand at the starting line and wait for the whistle to blow. So when the
Yeah.
whistle blows, you can go straight to work and spin out of the gate quickly and not allow somebody else to beat you to the wind.
Yeah. Well, let's back up for just a quick second. So people, if they're not familiar yet with Tony Smotherman, I'd be surprised. But let's just say they're not for a minute. Could you give us just like a 60-second kind of overshot, who you are, kind of quick background, where you're coming from, so people as they're listening or watching this, that they get a feel for, who they're about to get some really good wisdom pearls from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, number one, to be here today, and number one, to spend time with you and your guests. You can tell maybe by the talk that we've talked so far, I am not from the Midwest. I am from the South. I can't hide that slang. So
You'd
born and
struggle to
raised,
hide it for sure.
so born and raised on a family farm, just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Been there my whole life until now. This place that you can see that I'm sitting at right now is in Wayne County, Iowa, which is my new residence. We just now moved up here, but my background,
Congratulations.
well, thank you. Yes, it's a big jump, obviously, coming out of Nashville, but COVID changed that portion of the world I live in to made it or to have made it very crazy and busy. So I'm not at the point in life where I want to be around craziness all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but my background is as a young man, I was an outdoorsman. My dad wasn't a deer hunter that I'm sure most folks that are watching the podcast here and listening to the podcast are from the deer hunting background per se, and that's their drive and ambition. But I actually grew up as a coon hunter. My dad was a big houndsman, so we were coon hunters our whole lives. My dad was world champion coon hunter and traveled the world and hunting competitively across the country. So I got my start in that. Um, but I kind of like the Tim the Tool Man Taylor scenario where if it's bigger, it's better. And I remember growing up, we always hunted with a Winchester Model 67A single shot 22 rifle. So up until I was like 14 or 15 years old, the only rifle I knew was a 22 short or 22 long, which is a bullet about that big. And I remember, of course, again too, in that time, this kind of dates me a little bit, but there were no deer in that area at that time,
Mm.
so nobody was really a deer hunter. But I did meet a deer hunter when I was 13 to 14 years old, a good friend of my dad, and he showed me a 270 cartridge. And when I remember seeing that cartridge, and I thought it looked like a young missile. I'm
Yeah.
like, what is that? Because it's 10 times bigger than anything I've ever seen. He goes, oh, it's a 270. We use it for deer hunting, and like it become a thing to me so quick because I was like, well, my gosh, I want to be a part of this deer hunting stuff. And my dad
Hmm.
thought I was an idiot because you got to go sit in a tree for 4, 5, 10 hours a day, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? That's the dumbest thing ever. Why would you go sit in a tree? But it was kind of a new thing, and deer hunting wasn't much of a topic in Middle Tennessee or in Tennessee at that time. But
Sure.
it kind of encapsulated me to where I just could not get past it. I wanted to beat a critter on his own turf in his
Hmm.
living room, in his bedroom. I want to beat that guy. Now I think that's kind of the competitive side of me, I guess.
Well, I think
But
it's wired into all people, and especially men. I think it's just part of their nature is to conquer and provide and all of that sort of. So just like the natural hunting instinct.
oh
But
yeah.
I think a lot of people just they're not aware of it until you like first get that taste of it, and then you're like, why does this excite me so much? Like, why is this?
Mhm.
It just feels like I was made to do this. Well, it's kind of because you were.
That's right,
You weren't you
100%,
weren't
man.
made to go get your meat at the supermarket, but
Oh no, and of course, a lot of people realized that here 4 or 5 years ago when COVID hit, or 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, when COVID hit. But it got to be such a point that the outdoors, meaning me spending time on our farm and the neighbor's farm, deer hunting. I come to a realization that got me out of a party life. That got me from being a teenager when we were partying and drinking and running through the neighbor's fence and over people's stop signs and mailboxes and all the stuff you do when you're under the influence of the juice. And it got me out of the party crowd, and it basically encapsulated me to where I realized when I was maybe 18 or 19 that the outdoors saved me from being in trouble or going down the wrong path in life,
mhm.
basically. And I knew then that, and at that time, there wasn't what we know as outdoorsmen today as a hunting industry per se. I just knew that I wanted to figure out some way to let other people know that the outdoors was such an amazing place and such a beautiful place to be. And the only way that I could figure out how to do that was become an outdoor writer. Now, mind you, I have a hard time speaking English sometimes because I am from the South. But at the end of the day, I knew that you can do anything in life that you want to do if you put your mind to it and worked hard enough at it. So even though English was my worst topic in high school, and maybe still is some of my worst topic today, but I learned how to become an outdoor rider very effectively because I studied other outdoor riders, and I wanted to be an outdoor rider at 19 and 20 years old, just so I could tell the story of the adventures that I have and have had at that time, so that I could make sure they understand that the outdoors is a doggone cool place to be,
Hmm.
which basically has superseded into everything that I do today. And it was like the man upstairs had put the path in front of me, because a kid introduced me to this 270 shell, and it just kind of grew from there. It's a great big, almost like an infection per se, that it just overtook me. And I become an outdoor rider. Was an outdoor rider for several years, and I still do some now, but a lot less than I did before. Then I end up purchasing my home state's largest hunting and fishing magazine called Tennessee Outdoor News. I purchased that publication at 23 years old because I'm a very driven individual, and I want to get out and work hard and make things happen in my life. And I knew that at an early age. So instead of being just an outdoor writer, I also wanted to be a publisher and editor of a publication, and ended up buying my home state's outdoor publication, and owned it for 10 years, and had 40 different outdoor writers working for us when we end up selling the publication. And
Wow.
then I went from there into outdoor television. And again, I wanted that platform not to be some kind of superstar, crazy egomaniac guy, but to have a bigger platform instead of a regional, statewide publication. I
Hmm.
wanted a national platform to be able to tell more people how awesome the outdoors was, and let them see the enjoyment that I was gathering from my outdoor adventures across the country. And all my social media handles is Traveling Hunter, and that's country slang, obviously country slang, Traveling Hunter. And that was kind of picked up because I basically, for years on end, traveled 6 months a year and hunted every state I could put my foot in, just to gather more intel, more adventures, and be able to transfer that through either through my writing or through the TV screen, that outdoors is a place to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. So how many years did you run Traveling Hunters, the TV show?
So I ran. So prior to that, when I sold the outdoor publication to pursue other outdoor endeavors, I hosted a TV show for a gun manufacturer called Night Muzzleloaders. They're based out of Centerville, Iowa, which is about 18 miles east of where I live at today.
Yep.
Which is kind of the reason it got me here, because I'm familiar with the area because of the time I would ingress egress out of Iowa working for that company.
Yep.
So they had a TV show called Born to Hunt TV, or Night Rifles Born to Hunt TV, on the Outdoor Channel, and I hosted that for 5 years. We traveled the world exclusively hunting with muzzleloaders, which is kind of what got my passion in muzzleloading today. But I did that for 5 years, and then I worked for Summit Tree Stands, and I hosted a show for them called Summit's High Places for 4 years. And then I went to Moultrie Game Cameras, and we had a TV show called Moultrie's The Hit List, using cellular data cameras. Mind you, they were not as good as they are today, but that was kind of the kickoff of cellular data cameras. So I
Right.
hosted a show for those guys for 3 years. And again, self-employed mindset,
Hmm.
driven mindset. I wanted to do more things, more creative, or have more creative control. So I started my own television show, again, affectionately called Traveling Hunter. Because in my opinion, everybody wants to be a traveling hunter. They want to go to different locations and see new things and hunt new species and all that kind of stuff. So basically, Traveling Hunter become an adventure show, to where we would travel to Newfoundland, New Zealand, Alaska, and everything in between, highlighting not only the great hunting adventures that we partook on, but also the amazing individuals that were in those local areas, the stories they had to tell, the Americana that is around those regions that we were hunting in. So it became an adventure show. And then I did that for 5 years on the Sportsman's Channel too, until unfortunately my dad got terribly sick and kind of had to stop doing everything outdoors
Hmm.
for a year or so to take care of him. And which obviously there's shifts in everybody's life, and there was a shift in mine. My dad got sick. I stopped doing all that kind of stuff and took a hiatus for a bit, but um, now been back in the game, and I work full time now for CVA muzzleloaders. Again, that's kind of my background, is hunting with a muzzleloader, and I dictate the future designs. I think that subject is called subject matter expert, to where that I dictate future designs and development of muzzleloaders and muzzleloading accessories. And I also, because of my background in media and being a writer, magazine owner, and a television show host, I manage all of our media that comes through those two brands, the CVA and Bagar brand. So manage our pro staffers, TV show hosts, bloggers, podcasters, YouTubers, writers, magazine owners, editors, publishers. So I handle basically what I do for those two brands is all the lifestyles that I used to lead.
Yep.
So it's a very
Well,
easy transition for
well,
me to
it's
do that.
pretty easy to understand how you end up in a position that does that. I can't think the way you describe it. There can't be anybody that's got a better built resume for that position than you. It's-
I've heard that a time or two.
yeah, I mean,
But again,
you
it's a very amazing blessing.
sure.
And the man upstairs saw me getting a little bit wayward when I was in my teen years, and introduced me to a suit 270, and then it just
Yeah.
become chaos after that.
Awesome. Well, on top of just your knowledge and experience there with like all of the media stuff and being so ingrained in the outdoor industry, your travels around the United States and outside and beyond, you have probably seen and been on a whole lot more hunting properties than the average hunter is going to see in 10 lifetimes. I got to
Been very
imagine you've seen really well developed ranches. You've seen some pretty rough swamp holes that, somebody's still trying to hunt, everything in between. So I'm honored, honestly, to have you on as a guest, because today's topic we're going to be really digging into here is how to buy a hunting property and the tips that we're going to give some young people or just people kind of looking. Let's gear this conversation a little bit more at the beginner. If not their very first land purchase, maybe one of their first couple, and what we can, from your experience and what you know about what makes a great hunting property, what makes a good land investment opportunity. If we can just kind of shed some light on that and drop some, like I said, some pearls of wisdom for people that if they, whatever we can pick out of the brain of Tony here, I think there's a lot of value. So if we just start digging around in there, we're probably going to find some gold nuggets. Let's start, Tony, your hunting experience. Like, first, give me a quick and dirty lowdown on your land journey. You as a personal land investor, like, when did you first become a landowner and where's it gone quickly from there?
So
You're,
you better pull up a chair. We
yeah,
may be here for a minute.
I keep
But
saying quickly. I know better. Like, there's not a quick version of this story. Do
no,
your
there is
best. Yeah,
not. So
you're fine. Lay it on us. We got time.
for the folks that's listening, I do apologize, but I do want to be very clear and transparent. As an outdoorsman, we get to hunt on different pieces of property, and I have been very blessed and honored to hunt on a lot of different ground across the country and every Canadian province and so on and so forth. And growing up on a family farm, I understand and understood land ownership, and I understood what it meant to my grandfather, my dad, me, and now I see it in my sons. I understand what land ownership means, um, and I come from a background where there's no silver spooning involved in my journey, in my grandfather's journey or my dad's journey. We were just basically poor dudes from Middle Tennessee that owned some ground and tried our best to work it and make a living off of it. And obviously some of the stuff that I just told you, a lot of that is a self-employed lifestyle. I didn't clock in and clock out per se, and I
Mm-hmm.
have somebody build me a retirement plan, a Roth IRA, or all the stuff that you think about as far as investments and retirements. A lot of us across the country don't have retirements. What we
Yeah.
make is what our retirement is. There's no pensions and everything, and people talk about Social Security and how that may not be here for me or you guys that's listening, or maybe even our children. Depends on kind of how the administration runs things, but we know it looks pretty grim. So my dad always told me back in the day is buy land. So I was just digging here now. I was looking down while you were talking, Chase, and it wasn't me being preoccupied, but I want to show you this here. So this is a photo that I just took of my brand new license plate on one of my vehicles here in Iowa. And if you can see that, you see that right there,
Buy dirt.
buy dirt. All right, so buy dirt has been my slogan for a long time. So my journey started when I was becoming an outdoor rider, and I was hunting on all these pieces of ground, and they were friends allowing me access, or I was hunting public ground. And, as a driven individual, I always thought, I kind of go back to what my dad said, oh my goodness, if I can just buy dirt,
Yeah.
if I can just buy some dirt, things will be awesome. And I want to own my own ground instead of hunting on my buddy's ground. I want to hunt on my own ground, which was that was my driver. Was not hunting on my buddy's ground, but hunting on mine. And it was a bit of a driver that wasn't based on return on investment that we look at today. And as an adults, we think about it more often. At that time, I just wanted to go hunt on my own dirt where I could do my own thing and put my own food plots in and not have to worry about asking permission or the place selling or something going wrong and somebody telling me I can't hunt there anymore or sharing
Right.
it with
Yep.
somebody else. If I own my own dirt and buy my own dirt, then I dictate my futuristic plan of what I want to do with that and development. And it encapsulated me to much so much where I just couldn't focus. And I bought my first farm at 23, about the same time that I purchased Tennessee Outdoor News, my home state publication. I bought my own piece, and as humans, again, we talk about bigger is better. Don't think when you're going in to buy your first piece that you got to buy a 160 or a 320 or 640 or 1,000. Anything is good to start with. Whether it's 40 acres or 20 acres or 15 acres. The first piece that I bought myself was 38 acres, was my first investment. And I knew that that was a good investment because obviously it was going to accrue equity. And of course, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't super smart, but I knew that that was a thing. People talking about land prices going up and maybe
Hmm.
one day I could sell it and make some more money. But one thing that I realized in all my travels is that um, the Tennessee area that I grew up in, it would make equity gain. So I'd make money if I sold it. But I was kind of guy too that I didn't want to sell it. I want to buy more. I don't want
Sure.
to sell nothing. I just want to keep buying. So I really wasn't making any money. It was just costing me money because I was spending money on taxes every year and it wasn't generating anything. And then I had the opportunity to go up to the Midwest to Illinois and start buying some ground or back up, start hunting some ground in southern Illinois. And I started seeing this corn and beans and stuff that I was not familiar with in Middle Tennessee because we didn't have that. And I started talking with the landowners that give me permission, which that was a thing back in the 90s that people would actually allow you to have permission to hunt on their property without charging you lease fees and things like that. But these landowners would basically go, oh, we get this much for crop rent and so on and so forth. So the calculator in my head started turning a little bit. I'm like, well, if we're buying ground here and our ROI is cash rent or crop share and equity gain, oh, wait a minute, the Midwest makes a bit more sense to me.
Hmm.
And at this time, I'm higher in my 20s, so I'm becoming a bit smarter. So instead of continuing buying farms and ground in Tennessee as I could afford them, I moved my investments, which I kept my Tennessee investments, but I started looking hard into the Midwest because number one, the deer hunting was 5,000 times better than Tennessee that I grew up in.
We're a little
So that
spoiled up
encapsulated,
here.
oh gosh, man, I didn't even know that existed for a long time. And then I got spoiled by that. And then I said, well, these guys are making money, annual money on buying Midwestern farms, even though I lived in Tennessee.
Hmm.
So I remember buying my first farm. It actually ended up being in Brown County, Illinois, just outside of Mount Sterling,
West
Illinois.
Central.
Uh,
Yep.
West Central, yep. Made a journey up there. Because I had met one of our longtime friends, Toby Stay. I met him. I actually hunted in Southern Illinois for a long time, did not buy there, but it was studying the Midwest because, again, as an outdoor writer, the Golden Triangle was the hottest topic in the outdoor publication circle. And the Golden Triangle, maybe it's a bit diluted today, but if you don't know what that is Pike, Brown, Adams, and Schuyler County. And that was talked about no matter what magazine you picked up, there was some story about a big deer that come out of the Golden Triangle of Illinois. And thankfully, just oddly enough, I met Toby Stay, which is I actually had dinner with Toby last night. So he's been a longtime friend since the 90s. And I ended up buying a farm right there. Now, so for listeners, there's one thing that you got to consider when you're purchasing dirt. In most cases, if you're just buying it outright, going to get a loan, you have to. We talked about this earlier, but you got to front load your work. You got to save your money. You got to bank some dollars back because you will find that piece that you want but it takes a down payment in most cases to be able to purchase that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's what I didn't do. This is lessons. I didn't have nobody to teach me that because my dad wasn't an investor. He wasn't a land buyer. It's just something that I picked up on my own because I just wanted to own my own dirt. I wanted to buy my own dirt. And I remember when Toby and I were looking at this one farm, an 80-acre piece there in Pea Ridge, and it seemed like it was like 47 prices of what it should be at that time, and or what I could afford. And we're looking at it, and I'm going, man, I got to have this piece. Oh, I got to have this piece. And then I went to Farm Credit Services to ask for a loan. They go, well, we need 20% down. I'm like,
From
20%? Bro, I ain't got that kind of money. What are you
right.
talking about? So sometimes you got to, I ended up having to sell my soul to the devil. So kind of a crazy story to be able to get that first piece in the Midwest. Um, Farm Credit Service would not give me a loan because I didn't have no down payment money. But I did have good standing with Farm Credit Services in Tennessee, which if you're looking at getting loans, Farm Credit Services is a huge nationwide organization, but each state is an individual operation. I didn't know that at the time, but I did find that out when I was trying to buy this first farm. And I went back to Farm Credit Services in Tennessee, which I had a good standing with those guys because I had bought 4 or 5 pieces of ground back earlier and had made my payments on them. So I had pretty good
Mm-hmm.
standing. And I said, hey, man, I found this piece of ground in the Midwest that I want to buy. It's in Illinois, but those guys up there at Farm Credit, they don't know me. They won't give me a loan. I said, is there any way I can get a loan down here for the down payment? And I'll take your loan as a down payment and take it up there and give it to them as my down payment. So now I got 2 loans running. I got one for the down. I got a loan for the down payment, and then I got a loan for the farm that I just bought. So it was a bit selling my soul to the devil, and it's a bit stressful. And that kind of comes what you're talking about. You got to load your work up front, and I did not. That's me being very green. So hard lesson learned. I paid more interest than I should have. But the main thing is I got my name on the deed of that farm. That was the main concern. No matter what I had to do, if I had to walk to Illinois dragging a rock, I was going to do it because I wanted that investment because I knew that the investments in the Midwest was going to be better than they were in my home state as far as ROI and return on your investment and annual payments that you receive. So it kind of grew into doing small stuff in Tennessee. Then it went up into Illinois because of the hunting is better, the return on investment is better annually, and then of course great equity gain too. And then, of course, there's a lot of government programs, CRP and CSP and all this different things that go in the Midwest that I didn't know about that also helps a land investor gain more revenue back from that property, which in turn allows you to make more enhancements to them, so on and so forth. So we can go down a rabbit hole on that. But I just kind of run up in the Midwest just because that's where I want to be because of hunting. And then it went over into Iowa and Kansas and just it's kind of exploded over the
So
years.
So aside from you becoming the land investor, becoming a landowner, buying multiple pieces down there in Tennessee, picking up some up here in Brown County in Illinois, then you continued to hunt Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa, across the
Everywhere.
rest of the Midwest, everywhere. Okay. So through that period of time, uh, how far into your land ownership journey before you became a land specialist, a land broker, got a real estate license and started in there?
So that's a good question. I think, I remember, and I guess I'm a soft-hearted kind of dude, I guess. But I remember going to these closing tables when I'd buy these farms, and I remember signing my name on the dotted line. Number one, being scared to death because I just signed my life away to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars that I didn't know where I was going to scrape up at. But I also remember walking out to my truck every time that I left the closing table, and the smile on my face was so big you couldn't wipe it off with a bulldozer. And I knew that I was reaching these ultimate goals and dreams that I had as a young man.
Yeah,
And
buddy.
yeah, and I just knew that I needed to share that, just like I needed to share my travels through the early years of knowing that the outdoors saved me, and I wanted to broadcast that through media, and I wanted to broadcast that through television, and now I saw, you know, equity gain in farms, and I saw my net worth per se climbing, and I knew that I wanted to give that back to somebody else and be able to give them the gift of land ownership because I know what it means to me and my family. And the smile that I got when I left those closing tables, I wanted to
Absolutely.
make sure that I helped other people do that. And then I got into um, real estate, we'll say legally with a license because I was buying farms, but I didn't have a
Sure.
license. But when I actually become a stamped in stone, wet signed real estate agent was like in 2009. And Toby and myself and Toby and Scott Whittington and Don Wagner kind of all was at the beginning of land guys because we were all of the same understanding that buying dirt was the thing. And we wanted to be able to help other people do that too. While we reached our personal goals, we want to help other folks do that too.
Yep. Yep. So 15 years professionally in the land sales business. So you've been helping buyers and sellers kind of meet their land journey dreams, the goals, whatever they're setting out, whether that's just buying that first piece as building a future home site, and that's going to be the only and the last piece of dirt they ever own, or if it's just the beginning for somebody buying multiple tracts. You got a lot of experience in it. You've seen a lot more of the Midwest doing real estate sales now in Tennessee, Illinois, and now Iowa than most, even let's say, full-time career professionals have. Most of us are pretty well grounded in one spot, and that's where we really get really familiar with our turf, maybe half a dozen counties, or maybe even like a third of the state if you really travel a bunch or sell in a big area. But the market in multiple parts of the Midwest, which makes you an awesome, awesome guest, a fun brain to pick. Let's talk real quick on, let's say somebody's looking for their first piece of property. What are maybe some tips that just apply across the board, whether that would be over in Central Tennessee or now in Central Iowa? What are some trends maybe that doesn't matter what part of the country somebody's looking for that piece of ground in, but things that they should be looking for, or red flags, things maybe they should try and stay away from?
So, and that can be a long one too, and a very deep one, But I think the biggest concern for me, and the first thing that I was kind of paying attention to when I was trying to was I didn't get too deep into the weeds and make sure, now we look at access and what our wind directions is doing and how we can ingress egress farms for hunting purposes. I just number one, wanted to get something that I could afford. And,
Mm,
again, everybody wants to own a 160 or 320, but at the end of the day, you can, not everybody can eat a Big Mac at one time. You got to take
sure.
small bites. That's why they make sliders, smaller hamburgers per se. And I think that's the most important thing is just to not overload yourself. Invest in what you can afford. That way you don't put stress on you, which is going to make you not a nice person because you're going to be a little sharpie bite there a little bit, which is going to obviously cause stress on your family. So don't think that you got to go out and buy the biggest and baddest place. You can start with a 20-acre piece. Actually, I have a gentleman here that's staying with me here in Iowa here at our party barn. He's a YouTuber, odd enough, works in outdoor media. And he just bought his first 20-acre piece just south of us in Missouri. So
Nice.
don't overload your wallet, or don't take a too big of a bite that jeopardizes your journey in real estate investment. I think it's my biggest advice piece.
Right on. I would reiterate that with my own person. I was that guy. Okay. So 12 years ago, maybe almost 13 years ago now, we bought our first piece of property, first piece of raw land. And I had my heart set on it, something that was at least 100 acres, because I was very management minded and knew that, like, okay, I want a lot of diversity, and I just hadn't seen what I wanted in a smaller piece yet. So I just thought, we've got to, whatever kind of financial crunch it's going to mean for a little bit, we're willing to make it happen. And I just knew it was going to take at least that big of a piece to meet all my goals. Well, this piece came up for sale close to home. My wife's driving to work one morning, sees the sign and calls me, and she's like, there's farm for sale down the road from us. It's like, no, no, there's not. I would know. I would know. Well, I didn't know about it yet because it wasn't even really online yet. The broker had just stuck the sign out in the dark the night before. And I called about it. We got the details, and it was only 55 acres, but it checked 9 out of 10 boxes that I was looking for. And I struggled with it because I was like, I was afraid if we bought a piece that was only 55 acres, that, man, then, it might be another 10 years or 15 years before I could manage swinging a little bit bigger piece. And who knows if you'll ever have the opportunity to add on to this 55 acres. And so I struggled with it for, just probably a night. We kept talking about it. I'm like, great farm, great location, checked all the rest of the boxes. And I'll tell you what, zero regrets about buying that farm. And I knew after the end of that first year, I was like, here I was worried that 55 acres wasn't near big enough, especially as a young person. I think I was 25 when we closed on that. And it was just, it was everything I could manage for the first 8 or 10 years, because when you're young, you're in that like super busy season of life where I wouldn't have had time to keep up with any more land than what we had. I was trying to do the forestry work myself, was trying to get food plots in, was trying to do some prescribed burns, was trying to build fence for livestock in the future and do, just form it the way that we wanted it. And it was like, I wouldn't have had the money or the equity, the time to do, the cash funds to do anything bigger than that at the time. And it was like lesson learned. I mean, 25 acres that offered half of what this farm did, it would have still been a good purchase at the time if that had been what was laid in front of us. So definitely appreciate your message to people on that. And I can speak from personal experience that you will have zero regrets about buying that first tract that you think, it's pretty small. I'm not sure, it's going to live up to my goals or whatever. It may not long term, but if that's what gets you into land ownership and then you can leapfrog into something else or add on to it, like Rome was not built in a day. Don't shy
That's
away
right.
from buying a good farm at a good price.
No, that's the thing too. You gotta walk before you crawl scenario. And again, everybody wants to own the biggest piece they can, but maybe it's just not the right time for you in your station in life. And the 55 acre piece you bought, there's somebody else that's going to want it after you get done. When you get to the point in life where you can go, okay, man, I'm maybe ready for an 80 now or a
Right.
120 or whatever that case may be. So don't get down on yourself if you're a listener today and you go, golly, man, I do want that 100 acre piece like Chase was talking about, and you just can't afford it. Just
Yep.
be glad you can get something. And again, just buy dirt and get your name on the deed, and then you're in the right process. You don't get to the top of the ladder by stepping on the third rung. You step on the first rung to get to the third.
Boom. That's the knowledge pearls of wisdom I was talking about there, Tony. I knew they would just
just
start
some just small
dropping on
nuggets.
it. All right, that's a good one. Okay, so how does one in today's day and age, it's a little different from when you started searching for your
Oh,
first piece of dirt and how I started searching for my first piece of dirt. What are the places people ought to start their land search journey today?
you really said a big piece in a very short period. Things have definitely changed. I remember buying the first farm in Tennessee at $750 an acre, and trying to figure out how in the world I was going to afford it. Today, that same dirt's $90,000 an acre, because of the location of where it's
Right?
at.
Wow.
Not every portion of the country has seen that kind of progression, and it comes
Hmm.
down to, and we all know this, being in the real estate game, is it's all about location. You hear this location, location, location scenario, and that is definitely the facts. No matter what portion of the world you've been in, where we're at today in land is not where we were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. It's definitely been a progression. But also another additive is that they don't make any more of it, and people's born every day. So the land is going to increase. And what we see today is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this ground is this much per acre.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, next year we'll be going, oh my gosh, I should have bought it last year. So cheap.
Yep. Yep. Every farm that I have regrets about, it's because I didn't buy it when I had the chance, and
Mm-hmm.
it ain't, if it comes up again, it ain't gonna get cheaper.
No, it don't go down, and that's the greatest thing too. And so I think, you just need to understand the area that you live in, understand what you can afford, so on and so forth. This is the most important part. I started in Middle Tennessee, which is where I grew up. It's what I knew. But obviously, because of my travels in the hunting industry, I did have a wonderful blessing to see other portions of the country and like them a whole lot. So invested and end up obviously moving here some years later. But I think you need to know the region that you live in, what you can afford, what your goals and aspirations for that piece may be. Meaning, you can't go buy a piece of row crop ground and you want it for hunting. So you need to understand what that end goal is. And basically, when you shoot a rifle, you don't aim this close to your face. You aim way down there. When you go into purchasing a piece of ground, my thought process is not looking at the gate that I'm looking at, or looking at the gate that gets me inside the fence. I want to look at the longest goal I can possibly have to make sure that that piece of ground is going to meet my goals and aspirations of what I'm looking for in general. There's all kind of property across the country, and 100% row crop tillable ground. There's recreational ground that we hope to have as an investor as we get to hunt on it and get a little row crop out of it. I know folks from the south portion of the country they live in, they don't want anything open. They want all timber. So it depends on where you're at, what you're looking for. But you kind of got to figure out what that long play is. Is it something that I want to fix up and sell to make into another bigger parcel? And if that piece of ground is suitable for that, if it's not suitable for that, then you need to move on to the other one. But I don't think, and I'm not saying this because I'm saying that I think I'm like a smart, savvy land guy. I probably am not. But what I am going to say is you just got to get your name on that piece of property because I had a friend of mine that's a used car lot guy. And I'm like, dude, how do you sell all these old used junker cars all the time? And he goes, bro, there's a butt for every seat. I'm like, oh, noted. I'm gonna see if I can transfer that into land ownership because if I buy a piece of ground and it does not end up making my goals after a year or so ownership,
Yep.
then I can look for something else because there's somebody that's going to, the piece of property that I do own, it
Mm-hmm.
will meet their goals and aspirations.
100%. Yeah. And another good way to look at that is if some pieces are just tricky, they're sitting on the market for a while, they're not selling and that sort of thing. As a buyer, there may be buying opportunity in that particular track for you. And it's if
Mm-mm.
you can see who is the ideal buyer for that piece and why isn't it selling today, is it just price dependent or is it because, it's got the wrong zoning or it's got um, it just has it's too wet. The access isn't good, whatever. If you're a person who can creatively figure out how to solve those problems, you instantly add equity to that land purchase. So, a butt for every seat is true. Like I think about, I had a guy call me about selling this kind of rough, awkward, awkwardly shaped, bad access piece of ground that he kind of fell into somehow over the years. And he was like, is it sellable? I was like, oh, it's sellable. Like I hadn't even walked it yet. I hadn't laid eyes on it, but you just know that like there is a buyer for it. We just have to figure out who that's going to be, what the highest and best use of it is, and what price is appropriate that somebody's actually going to be willing to give. But um,
Here's something to think about that to add into that, Chase, just a little bit. I know you're as close to as perfect of a human as it gets. You're an amazing specimen, hard-working machine, but not everybody's built perfect like that. And we accept ourselves and our neighbor and our friends and our family as not being perfect humans because
mm,
nobody is perfect. Now, I,
right.
I, I say that you are, but maybe your shirt's a little bit wrinkled, so you're not perfect today. But not every farm is the same way. You're going to buy a piece and you look at it and you go, oh man, this hits all the bells and whistles. Like you talk about this 55-acre piece that you bought, it hit 9 out of 10. Not everyone is going to be perfect, perfect, perfect. So you got to accept it for some of its impurities and some of its downsides. But like you say, you can go in and you can manipulate that sometimes and make that not as big of a weakness as it was when you purchased it and picked it up. So when you transfer it down the road, this effort that you put into fixing that weak link, that 1 out of 10 that wasn't good, you just created a lot of value on that piece of property for the next guy that comes in when you see a progression of someplace else that you want to purchase.
What is your favorite piece of property that you've ever purchased or been involved with? You got a like quick story. If you had to pick a favorite, what is it? What was it? And what makes it special to you?
Of course, they're all special. We love them all. It's like your kids, you love every piece, and uh, I don't want more kids, but I want more ground, So it's
You're
kind of a
not
weird
tired of
scenario.
that yet.
But I think to be honest with you was I did purchase ground in my home state of Tennessee for several years, but when I uh, bought that first piece of ground in Pea Ridge Township in Mount Sterling, Illinois, I thought that that was the end all cure all, and I had made it because I not only had an 80-acre farm, which was a dream. I did want that 100, but I know, like you, I knew I couldn't make it. So I slowed her down just a touch to 80 acres. But when I went there and was able to sit in a tree stand for the first time on that 80 acres, and I could see row crop ground that was making me return on my investment. I saw a creek that I could fish in, which in turn would give me return on my investment because I got to enjoy that investment fishing in that creek. And I remember seeing the first 150-inch deer walk down the fence line on the edge of a CRP ticket, which also created return on my investment. So there were so many pieces that come along, but it was like in a flood of emotions when I sit there that first time and felt that first cool breeze of fall, and I could smell it. And I think about, or had well, at that time was thinking about investments because obviously I'm self-employed, and I
Hmm.
remember talking about people telling me that I need to do Roth IRAs and invest in the stock market and all that kind of stuff. But I can bet your sweet butt, bro, that ain't not one time you've ever been able to hunt and fish and see a 150-inch deer walk down Wall Street that was your investment.
That's no joke. We have a Edwards Jones guy, that kind of helps us manage some of the stock market investments because you can't be an expert in everything. And I will tell anybody who asks, I know nothing about the stock market. I should not be managing my own investments there. So we dabble, we put a little money there. And every year when we have a sit down with that guy, he tries to talk me into throwing a little bit more money at these accounts, throw a little bit more money at that account. And I just, why don't you throw some of your money at some land? Well, I don't know anything about land. I was like, I trust you. You trust me. I'll find you a great parcel. And
Yeah,
he is not like, he's just not comfortable with it because I just don't know. I don't know anything about that. I have all of my money tied up in the stock market, he would tell me. And I'll say, well, that doesn't sound like a very diverse portfolio.
I don't
He's,
know.
he
So,
does what
so
he knows. I do what I know. It sounds like you pretty much are doing what you know, but when you truly are an expert in something, you're passionate about it, it's going to meet not just your financial goals, but also all of your other goals in the lifestyle that you're after.
yeah,
That's a no-brainer. That's where
yeah.
I'm going to put everything.
Yep. So I'll tell you just a touch of a story because I'm full of stories, but I'll tell you just a story just to kind of read what you're talking about with this Everett Jones guy. So when I was getting my first bank accounts in my 20s, early 20s there, I guess, I remember this gentleman pulled me aside. He goes, hey, what are you doing? What you up to? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. This is what I do for a living, da, da, da. And he goes, man, sounds like you're self-employed. You need to create this Roth IRA. And I'm like, oh, I've kind of heard a little bit about that, but I don't know much about it. It's a very foreign matter to me. And I'd already had some real estate investments at the time. And he goes, well, let's take $10,000 and let's put it in this Roth IRA for your retirement. You're a young man. You got a long time for this to gain equity. And each
Hmm.
year you're allowed to put $3,000 to $5,000 or whatever that is into that Roth IRA. And I'm like, oh, okay. It goes back to what you said, a diverse portfolio. So I'm like, okay, this I'll diversify a little bit. I'll take some of my cash, put into that, let it do its thing, let it make, the old scenario, make you money. Let's put it in there, let it make money. And I remember every year when the statement would come up and he'd go, hey man, you're free to put some more money into the Roth. The year's up, it's time to reinvest more into it. And I'm looking at it,
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, I'm a dumb redneck, but bro, it's smaller. Why? What? Oh, you got to play the long game, the 30-year game. It's been a 22% interest gain over the last 30 years. It's amazing. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
but look, dude. Again, I am not real smart, bro. I barely got out of high school, but these numbers ain't jiving. And then so he taught me into it, and I'd do it again. And then I'd go back again the next year, and I'd look at it, and it's smaller again. I'm like, bro, this has got to stop. He goes, oh, again, the same old sales pitch from your investor guy. And I'm like, look, here's a common world scenario. And we talked about this last night here sitting at this couch last night watching TV. If you have a dead horse, and this just comes to common thought processes. You're looking out in your field, and you're a cattle farmer, you're a horse farmer, or whatever, you're a livestock man. If there's a livestock animal out there in that field and it's dead as a hammer and been dead for 2 weeks, you go out there and put more hay in its mouth?
Stop
No.
feeding it.
Stop feeding it. It's dead. So that's what I ended up doing when this like 3 years into it, it kept getting smaller and smaller. And I'm like, bro, okay, here's the dead horse scenario. I'm done feeding this son, but give me my money. I said, just so you know, you've cost me a farm because as much money as this stock market thing, this Roth IRA thing is eating, you cost me a down payment on a rental house or a small farm, which I can
Hmm.
bet you right now would have never cost me money. It would have made me money. Um, so at that time, then that's when I really went 100% full focus into real estate for myself and knowing what it was making me, and then of course drove me into wanting to help others meet those goals too.
Yeah.
Because I've never lost on a piece of real estate ever, like ever, all capital letters.
That's
But
awesome.
that stock market, even back in like '08 and '09, my wife is from Wyoming, and my father-in-law obviously is from Wyoming, and he's a big oil man, and he put a bunch of money into real estate. And I remember when things hit like in '08 and '09, which was kind of the worst that I knew as an adult.
Right.
He called me one day and told me about all this money he lost. And I'm like, what? How much? He goes, oh yeah, and it was just, for me, it was a substantial amount of money.
Hmm.
And he goes, well, but we'll play the long play. I'm like, sir, let me explain something to you. I know I'm your son-in-law, and I'm probably an idiot in your eyes, but I can bet you that money you lost in that stock market, I bet you I can make 10 times it if you'd let me buy a farm for you. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you go through the stress of somebody putting your money in some kind of investment that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't control? Not only that, you got to pay this dude to do that for you. Then when you take it
Right.
out early, you get penalized for it. And I don't get to hunt and fish or ride foilers or watch birds or anything
You
on.
make a compelling case, Tony.
Oh my gosh, bro! So
For
it
sure.
just like it just drove me and drove me to dig deeper and deeper into real estate. And right now, I have in my life, I have zero investments in any kind of thing other than dirt. I probably don't have two nickels to rub together, to be quite honest with you, because it's all in real estate. But
I've told
what it
people
does.
many times my goal in life is to die cash poor and land rich. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I know what I would like to leave to my kids. Let's put it
Hmm.
that way. But
You betcha.
so let's talk real quick, changing gears just a little bit because things are different. Tennessee, they're different in Kentucky, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. You've kind of been around a lot, and I've had this question come up several times to us in like messages. It's a question that I think young buyers, especially, or people who are looking at the first piece of ground, are interested in knowing. You might know this answer better than I would. So one thing they've asked is, what does it take as far as land ownership goes to get landowner tags in a certain state? Now, here in Illinois, I can answer that question, but that's 39.5 or more acres. Everybody always says 40 plus, 40 plus. It's actually 39 and a half. The state does us one favor here and they'll round up to 40. But if you have at least 39 and a half acres, you, your spouse, and your immediate dependents that are under 18 years old can get free landowner deer permits, free landowner turkey
Yep.
permits. You just have to apply for it once every 5 years and you're good to go. They'll keep sending them to you. And then after 5 years, it doesn't show up in the mail. You go, oh, I forgot. I got to go apply again. But what is the landowner tag situation out there in Iowa where you're at now?
So every state reads that a bit differently. I know, like I was just in Kansas last week. In Kansas, if you own 80 acres, you are guaranteed a landowner tag as a non-resident, and that is considered a non-resident landowner tag, or landowner voucher. So you do get that in Kansas if you own 80, like you said. In Illinois, it's 39 and a half plus. Tennessee, it doesn't really make a lick of difference. In a lot of the southern states, it doesn't really matter. You can still get a tag being a non-resident landowner. It's not a big hurdle. The Midwest seems to make it a bit more complicated than any other place. So like Iowa for years. So I've been coming and going here in Iowa since my gosh, maybe 93 or 94 when I started working for night muzzleloaders here in Centerville, Iowa. And there is no landowner preferences here in the state of Iowa, which does make it a little bit rough for a non-resident landowner investor per se. The big return on that is you're hunting some of the biggest whitetail deer in North America. You're hunting some of the largest subspecies of whitetail deer in North America, and because of that lack of land ownership vouchers here in Iowa, it does make the age structure be extremely strong. And talking about current times, which kind of dates us here, but obviously we're into November of 2024. But for years, which is which has always been odd to me, that the Iowa Game and Fish basically is run by the Iowa Bowhunters Association, which is a very strong, probably the strongest lobbying group in the country that we know. They are a very powerful entity, and they have allowed people to come into the state and then party hunt or hunt on party tags per se. So if you were a non-resident landowner, you could hunt on a tag of your buddies. It's kind of a weird scenario, which I always thought was weird, but that went away in June 5th of this year, so June 5th of 2024. So you to get a tag here, you actually have to be a resident, or you have to draw just like any other non-resident would, no matter if you own 1 acre or 5,000 acres.
Right.
So it does make it tough to own ground here in Iowa and not be a
Hmm.
resident, which is one of the reasons I now live here, to not have to jump through those hoops anymore. But
I've heard
it's
that
really
before.
amazing. Yeah, it's really crazy. A lot of people have moved up here for that have the ability to work remotely, and of course, COVID changed all that, so it made it
Hmm.
not such a big deal anymore. But if you are living in one state and you want to own land in another state, you do need to dig into that. What non-resident, non-resident land ownership look like, because every state reads it totally different.
Yeah. I've heard, so we have people that I'm close to, the Iowa Illinois line. County I live in borders the Mississippi River. And we've got some local people, if they own a couple of farms here, maybe they also buy one over in Iowa, or if they own a couple over there, sometimes they'll call and they'll be interested over here. They want to own in both states for a couple of reasons. One, in Illinois, you can only harvest 2 antlered bucks per season. So it doesn't matter if you got 6 archery, either sex tags, or firearm and combination of whatever, you can only kill 2. Doesn't matter what tags you use to do it or what seasons it's in. So some of them will go over, they'll want to buy a farm in Iowa too, just to kind of extend their season a little bit. They
Yep.
tag out here, they want to hop over there and go hunt their Iowa farm. If they live over there, they like that they can come over here, even though they're a landowner, but they're not a resident. They can still get landowner tags. They're not free. They pay half price, which
Hmm.
I think over here it was, our tags now are in the 400 to 450-ish range for either sex combo non-resident, but it's half that as a non-resident landowner.
Yep. I took
Um,
part of that for many years.
Yep. So the people who fall into that camp and are hunting multiple states are still enjoying benefits of land ownership, even if it's not the state that they're living in.
That's right.
And that's
And one thing to keep in mind too, like, so you're talking about this ability to hunt or tag out in one state and go to another and hunt again on your own property. And so you got to think about that when you're digging into what states you want to be. Obviously, there's a lot of great whitetail states across the Midwest. The dollar value on land per acre varies significantly, but also the ability to hunt on that the entire season also changes quite a bit. And I say this to, like, so Iowa, you're a 2 buck state, or I say that because I live here now. We are a 2 buck state, but if you own land, you're a 3 buck state. You get an archery
woo.
gun, archery bow, and a bonus landowner tag.
I
So
didn't know
if you're
that.
non-resident coming into the state, you can only harvest one because you got to pick a bow or a gun. But now when you live here, you get three. But if you like, a lot of people look at Kentucky. Kentucky is a doggone great state. It's in the top 5 Boone and Crockett producing states every year, and has been that way since I've even been playing ball in the outdoor industry. Land values there are a whole lot cheaper or less expensive. Your return on your investment is not as good because they don't have a lot of row crop ground in some of those areas to get annual revenue off of those, but the buy-in is cheaper. Here's the
Hmm.
really kick in the shorts is it's a 1 buck state. So here's the cool thing about Kentucky is you can hunt like the first week of September. Everybody's in full velvet. Everybody's still in bachelor groups. It's an opportunity that you don't get anywhere else in the country. But if you harvest your target buck on September 4th,
Your
you're
season's
done.
over.
Over, extra large over.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you got to keep in mind and consideration too of what your end goals is how much you want to hunt there. I know a lot of people that are great with harvesting 1 buck. I mean, I personally like the concept because it applies a lot of age structure, makes you be a bit more selective in your area, but it does cut down on your personal return on investment of what your actual usage is of that investment.
Copy that. No, that's awesome. That's really good info. I had no idea that Kentucky was a 1 buck state, and I guess I should know that. So I have a good friend that lives down there, big deer hunter, and half of his Facebook posts through the whole fall season are in Kansas. And I'm always like, "What's so great about Kansas? I thought
That's
Kentucky
because
was
he
where
can't
it's
hunt in
at, man."
Kentucky anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he shoots his buck in Kentucky the first couple of weeks, and he's not just going to sit on his couch the rest of the season. So that makes a whole lot more sense now. I never asked him about
Yep.
that.
Yep,
So,
but it's great for shooting trophy animals because there's a lot of big ones there because of that age structure.
yeah, for sure. And that is the damaging thing. Is such a catch 22 about the state of Illinois. It's great that you can buy over the counter tags. Anybody from anywhere can come here, go to Walmart, buy their permit, and be out in the stand that afternoon hunting. I love that. And
Yep.
most serious deer hunters in the state of Illinois would say, I hate that. That's horrible. That's why we have these struggles with, oh, our sex ratios are all screwed up and my area gets hammered too hard and whatever. There is a lot of pressure, especially in certain areas, certain neighborhoods, and outfitting kind of gets a bad rap sometimes because of that. And so there are issues that it can create, but at the same time, it's opportunity. And as a passionate landowner and a passionate conservationist, I see huge value in keeping people interested in hunting. This
Oh
hunter
yeah.
recruitment retention movement that, it kind of
Lottery.
rallies the last few years. People are just trying to not just get new people into hunting, but how do we keep them? How do we retain them? Well, opportunity.
Yep.
People, the number one reason that people come into hunting and get hooked on it and love it and then later just quit doing it is because they didn't have great access to hunting property. They didn't,
And it's a
they couldn't.
problem.
Yeah, it is a real problem. And so, as you know, if I said, well, I live in a city, let's say I live in Chicago, or I live in, Minneapolis or someplace, but my in-laws have a farm down in Iowa. I'd love to go hunt there every year, but as a non-resident, it's pretty hard for me to get a permit. I'm putting in the lottery. I'm trying to draw a permit just to be able to hunt ground in a certain area. And like, it's an access limitation. And the fact that anybody can come to Illinois and buy an over-the-counter tag and go hunt on some public ground that same day, or leases are available, there's opportunity. So it's, even if you haven't pulled the trigger and bought and become the landowner yet, you can play, you can get in the game.
You
Um,
absolutely can. And like you mentioned, Kentucky is a great state for that, because the tags are pretty inexpensive there as well. I mean, it's like $100 and something versus Illinois 400 and something. And
yeah,
all these Midwest states are pretty expensive for non-residents to get into, but Kentucky's a good one.
yeah. All right. What would you say? This will shift gears a little bit to looking ahead. We just made it through an election. We don't have to get in and talk politics, but I saw daily for the last couple of months the momentum of the industry that we had seen grow the last 3 or 4 years just kept slowing down as we got closer and closer and closer to the election. And when finally you would just ask some people, like, what's going on? You were really interested in finding something a few months ago, and now we're we're pumping the brakes, it feels like. And I feel
Mm.
like a lot of the response there was that they wanted to wait and see what happened. I heard that many, many times. I want to wait and see what happens. Well, we're
Yeah, that's on
post-election now.
repeat.
Yeah, it is. And it was, so a lot of good farms, inventory slowly started to build. And I don't think that was just here in this territory. I think it was kind of around most of the country. Um, Now, do you suppose going forward the next 6 to 12 months, is it a good time to buy a piece of real estate? Do you think that the market is going to really take off and skyrocket? I mean, what's your best prediction?
So I think, I personally believe, and I think this is not just in the real estate market. This is just in kind of in buying, purchasing anything market. And car sales has slowed. I mean, everything has slowed down, in my personal opinion. Just listen to people that I know and communicate with quite often. But I think that now that we're past that, like you said, I saw not pumping the brakes. I saw put both feet on them and smash the brakes as hard as you can because people were scared to death. And
Hmm.
that was speculation of, as the interest rate's going to keep climbing. I heard 2 days before the election that we were going to jump up another 2 points, and they had just jumped up to 8%. A week prior to that, so we went 7.5 to 8. Then they said, "Oh, maybe 2 more points," which bumps us up to 10%, which is higher than anything I've ever seen as an adult. I have heard stories of 18% back in the old timer days, from the old dudes, but I've never seen nothing like that in my lifetime, and maybe not even my dad's lifetime. But now that we're past that, I think that, uh, I guess for in all actual purposes, people feel like a ton of bricks has been lifted off their chest and off their back. Because actually, I'm in the process of trying to go buy a new vehicle, and I couldn't even get a car dealership to return my phone call yesterday. They called me back last night and said, "Dude, I am so sorry that we didn't call you back. We're so busy right now that we can't even answer the phones." So it's every market that's that way. So everybody's
Yeah.
been standing both feet on the brakes and holding it still as hard as they could, knowing that they want to do something, but scared to death of where we're going to shift. And
Right.
I think now we're 2 to 3 days past, and people are starting to breathe easy, and the gate is going to open back up again. I mean, I'm already getting phone calls about everything underneath the sun,
Hmm.
as far as buying ground and where we're going to be. And I did hear this morning on the news that the interest rates actually went down, not going up, so that's going to make things breathe a little easier. I've talked to other guys that's in the real estate market, and their phones are ringing off the hook too. That now, even though our interest rates are still a bit tall, people feel like that it's still a good time because they know what the future is going to hold, at least for the next 4 years under this
Right.
new
They have a lot more
administration.
confidence about buying something today.
Oh yeah, yep.
So if that plays out and that's the truth of it, this, it'd say, oh gosh, if the real estate market's going to take off, maybe now is not such a great time to buy it. I hear that in the back of my head because I know there's new buyers to the market that might feel that way. They might be timid because they're like, oh, I don't want to get in when things are about to take off. It's like, why not? Like, why wouldn't you want to? As a buyer, don't you want to? But now would be the time to buy, I think, because
My
if you
opinion.
if you jump in and grab something and the price just goes up and up, well, you can gain some rapid appreciation.
Oh, it's going to go up. I can guarantee you that. It's always been a historical trend that things are climbing, and I've never seen it backlash per se in the regions that I played in. Maybe '08 and '09, it kind of it maybe it fell back a little bit, but it was minuscule and it was only for a short period of time. It wasn't that 30-year plan like my Roth IRA guy was telling me that trash he was telling me. It was for a short window. So yes, no, I think any time is a good time to buy real estate if you can afford to do so. If you have the money to go buy it, now is the best time. Today, this afternoon, tomorrow morning. Um, and yeah, so I'm doing the same thing right now. I'm looking at pieces in 3 different states today to trying to figure out working some negotiations out right now because now's the time.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about hunting properties, getting somebody into their first real estate investment with regards to raw land or recreational type property for kind of the outdoor enthusiast. But you have branched out, and you were telling me earlier, if you want to talk about this at all, if you don't, we'll clip this part out. But you're telling me a little bit about some of your other real estate investments. You're doing a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
more in like the commercial stuff now, right?
Yeah, and it comes down to that, what you had mentioned earlier, diversifying your portfolio. You know, it doesn't all have to be hunting ground, which is great because that's what I like to do. Obviously, you can tell by some of these critters here in the back, that's my jam. But real estate is still real estate at the end of the day. And I've not ventured into, I do have and have had several rental houses over the years. Not as fun as hunting ground. It is still real estate investment, but you got some negatives that come along with it, like that farm you're talking about. There was 9 out of 10, so you had one negative. Investing in rental houses is, in my opinion, also awesome. You just got to know that dealing with some people may not be as awesome as it should be, so there's going to be some negatives. But if you know that going in, it's not that big of a deal. But one thing that we're looking at now, and we just really put some signatures on paper yesterday of commercial real estate that we're looking in, and the one in particular is Dollar General. Of course, we're all spending time in rural America and looking for the next big whitetail to go after. Bet your sweet tail you drove past a Dollar General at some point, because
They're
that's what keeps rural America and middle America alive.
they are
And
everywhere.
they're everywhere, and they offer some amazing investment opportunities. And I've been looking at it because I have 1031 dollars that I am selling some of my Tennessee real estate holdings that did not make me much back in the day, but are making me a tremendous amount today. And I'm looking at 1031, which is basically land exchanging or profit deferred into new real estate. And of course, as a self-employed person or investor, you're looking for cash flow, and these Dollar Generals have a tremendous amount of guaranteed cash flow once you purchase them. Um, and you're actually buying real estate too. You buy the land that the building's sitting on, and you own the commercial building itself, plus generate a monthly revenue coming back in from those investments of purchasing those DGs.
Yeah.
And I,
That
and it's kind of a new order for me, or a new look, and
sure.
everything that we do. There's yin, heaves and hoes and yin and yangs, or shifts a little bit here and there. And this is one of those. And I talked to other great mentors that's in the real estate market, and I know several of them that has bought into Dollar General because it is guaranteed monthly revenue coming in, which looks really good when you go to get a loan for the next farm that you want. Uh, because you've got
So
guaranteed money coming in.
yeah, so same.
Diversifying the portfolio.
Right. Yep. So we went a slightly different route, but similar in some ways. Here, 2 years ago, we bought our first piece of commercial real estate, which was an old opera house building. This,
Yeah,
kind of
I
turn
heard
of the
some
century.
stories about that, man. I saw you guys
It's
posting about that on social media, and I thought I was envious as heck, man.
I don't know. I don't know if envy maybe ought to be the right response, but it's if you're passionate about old things like we are, it excites us. It's a fun project, and it's really cool to see it get developed and come and kind of breathing life back into, the an old downtown of a small, local community. So it's cool
Hmm.
in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I mean, part of me at the time, we'd kind of saved up a little bit, in the account for kind of this next real estate acquisition, and I was hoping that would become the next, 160, 200 acre farm, and what, that
Yeah.
was going to be the direction we go. And then this opportunity presented itself, and it was like, okay, short term, I think this is going to tie us up a bit. So we'll just pray about it and say, Lord, you got big opportunities for us in the land purchase realm. We'd appreciate if you just hold off on that for just a little bit. Because timing is everything. And it seems like when
Oh
you
yeah.
start to diverge or you go too far in one direction, that's when all of a sudden this opportunity pops up over here that you've been waiting on. And you're just like, And
Yep.
so far, we're 2 years in. Do not feel at all like we have really missed out on any other, land acquisition that we were kind of hoping to make. It's like, nothing has really come and hit us in the face that like, oh, we needed that. Now we got to be able to move on that, and we're too vested over here. We're tied up. It has continued to grow. We've got now multiple businesses in it. There's going to be 5 total when it's done, and just kind of as it continues to grow, and the revenue base that generates continues to grow, and the value of the building continues to go up as we work on it. And we've partnered with the local village on a TIF contract to help us renovate this building and add value back to it. And so, like, it will continue to appreciate, the cash flow will continue to climb, and it will only position us better for that next land purchase whenever the right piece comes up. So it's um yeah, we're talking about buying hunting land, and whether it's that, maybe your goal if you're a young person is to buy a 40 or an 80 or a 160 or something somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere down south, close to a family plantation or whatever it is. Like, getting into the real estate game, maybe that's just buying that first little rental house and building in some equity, getting some cash flow going is going to set you up so much better so that when the right land purchase comes up, even if you don't have the cash down payment to go and buy that piece, you can borrow against, if you got 20 or $40,000 worth of equity sitting there in that rental house, go talk to your banker and say, hey, I need a loan on this thing right now because I need to purchase this thing today. And when you have the option to do 1031s, you covered a lot of good info there, but the one thing I didn't hear was that, and this, I'm sure it's just the like kind exchange. A lot of people get in their head that like kind exchange means I can sell a farm, I can buy another farm. I can sell a rental house, I can buy another rental house. Or if I sell a condo, I can buy another condo, or a commercial property, retail space, it has to be another retail space. I have helped people lots of times sell rental homes or apartment complexes and go buy a tillable farm or go buy a
Oh yeah.
recreational farm that has a little bit of agricultural income on it. If it has to be income producing property for income producing property, but you can sell a rental house and buy a farm by a 1031
Mhm.
exchange.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at here at this exact time. When I told you we put some wet signatures down on some Dollar General stuff yesterday, we're selling a farm and 1031ing into multiple other farms, but also into Dollar Generals as well because it is considered a like kind of real estate or 1031 exchange. And I checked with 1031 attorneys and all that kind of stuff because it is a new adventure for us, and they clarified it within like 30 seconds that absolutely that is doable scenario.
Right on. Well, that's awesome. I mean, learning how to make your money work for you is kind of what any investing is about. But
Hmm.
the deeper you get into real estate, I think the more comfortable you get with it, and the more of these kind of tools and advantages that just kind of start to become apparent to you. And I think the easier it is to see that, like, you don't have to be a rock star expert and like know everything about the real estate market. If you just connect with the right people, And this is a little
And who you are
plug.
until you know.
A little plug for the people like us that work full time in the land business, but find a trusted resource, find a trusted mentor, find somebody like Tony that is in your area, knows the market extremely well, can help kind of guide you through making that first purchase, that next purchase, or whatever. They're not going to lead you astray. Their goal is to help you build a portfolio if that's what you want. They want you to have such a good experience with your first purchase, your first investment, that within a year, 2, 3, you're going to be chomping at the bit and wanting to make the next purchase. So,
And that's just natural for us. So I always want more and more and more. And once you do it one time, it becomes a bit of a drug. You just want to keep doing it, and it's a great thing for you and your family and your children's down the road, to invest in this kind of investment, per se, in the real estate business. It is amazing, and it's done tons of things for myself and my family, and obviously your family as well. And I remember, back in the day when I was a young man, I'm like, oh my gosh, one of these days I want my own piece of dirt. And you can, for sure, no matter what situation in life you're in, no matter where you're at in America, no matter what financial situation you're in, you in fact control your destiny. And if you want to do it bad enough, you will figure out a way. Just like when I bought the first 80-acre farm in Pea Ridge, Township in Illinois, is I had to borrow one money from one place so I can give it to another place just to get the down payment. But if there's a will, there's a way, and the only person that stands in the way of meeting your goals is you in life. And if you want to get there with real estate investment, you for sure can do it.
fantastic. I can't think of a better summary of today's talk than that, Tony. So I don't think I have to look any harder for find a good spot to kind of wrap up the conversation. Before I do, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, but then I also would like to invite people to reach out to you directly, if that's all right. You
Hmm.
got what's your preferred method for people to contact you, Tony?
So, today where we live in is social media world. I get more direct messages through social media today than I do anywhere, through emails and phone calls. So if you go through and are playing on any social media, which if we're in a tree stand, we're probably on social media, figuring out what the next guy's doing and what deer he shot and what land he bought and so on and so forth. But all my social media handles through Facebook and Instagram and so on and so forth is always Traveling Hunter. Because I know that I've always enjoyed traveling and hunting, and I know the folks that we deal with as land investors, they want to travel and hunt too. So that is a way to get a hold of me through Traveling Hunter, any social media page, and just hit me with a direct message.
Awesome. All right. Well, I love that you're accessible that way. That's actually, I have your cell number, but it seemed like the best way to reach out to you was have Bailey ping you on Instagram, and boy, you respond
Yeah,
immediately. I mean,
I,
you're
I try not to miss those. Typically when you get those, they're not wanting to know what the weather is in your neighborhood. It's a serious question in most cases.
Yeah. Well, Tony, thanks so much. You are a delight, to have on and talk a little bit about land and to hear stories from you. Absolutely love you and appreciate what you're doing, kind of cheerleading this movement for young people to be able to not just get out in the outdoors and find that significance that they're looking for, but also to become a landowner and helping people do that successfully for a long time. Kudos, and really
Well,
appreciate
I
you just kind of
appreciate
being
that.
an ambassador for all of that and for the lifestyle that we kind of live here. So,
Well, it's
loved it.
absolutely my pleasure, and it's been a great blessing for the man upstairs to have the drive and ambition that I do. It's just an amazing gift. But at the end of the day, I have to spend it back to you for your drive and ambition, to help your clients in the region of the country that you live in, and also keeping the word out there, and also spreading the word in a larger format through a podcast format, that will help young people get up and reach their goals of land investment. So kudos to you for that hard work and diligent efforts. I know it's a
Well,
ton of work.
we'll keep doing it together. Look forward to hopefully
Absolutely.
having you back on at some point. I'd love to come out and see the ranch here one of these days. So hopefully we can make it out your direction. But when you come back through this way, don't be afraid to shout at us. Love to have you stop by the land loft and come visit us here in person. Maybe we can sit down for another conversation.
Would love
Uh,
to, sir. Thank you so much, very
yep.
much. And you guys listen. I hope you guys have an amazing day and amazing rest of the year.
And everybody listening to this, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials at Land Your Ground. We will catch you in the next episode.